by Ian J. Gray.
This is an ABC News special report.
Good morning, I'm Diane Macedo. We're coming on the air because authorities are holding a briefing about the shooting death of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. Kirk was shot and killed in front of thousands of people during an event at Utah Valley University. The shooter is still on the loose, and authorities say they're searching for a lone gunman who fired a single shot from more than 100 yards from where Kirk was sitting at the time. And those officials now are giving us an update on the investigation. Let's listen.
Good morning. I am Bo Mason, Commissioner for the Utah Department of Public Safety. I'd be remiss if we didn't start off today and recognize the significance of the day. Historically, on 9/11, law enforcement has come together as a group to recognize and honor those that sacrificed to preserve the ideals of this country, the freedoms of this country. And instead, we find ourselves today hunting a murderer who chose to violate our rights, the rights of an individual within this country. Just to recap yesterday's events, at around 12:20 p.m., political influencer Charlie Kirk was at Utah Valley University participating in a student-sponsored event with Turning Point USA. Charlie was shot at that event. He was transported to a local hospital where he later passed. Last night, his body was moved to the state office of the medical examiner. We will continue to facilitate movements to get him home today and with his family. Yesterday, during the investigative process, we located a couple of persons of interest. We interviewed those individuals, and after releasing them and after clearing them of being suspects, they faced scrutiny, they faced threats. We asked the public to be patient with the investigative process. These individuals were not suspects, they were people of interest. We ask that you do not impose into those people and that investigative process. They don't deserve that harassment for being subject to that. I'd like to thank all the investigators that are involved in this. They have worked around the clock, all day yesterday, through the night last night. Investigators from the State Bureau of Investigations, from county, from city agencies, the university, our federal partners with the FBI, the ATF, and many others. Those are just a few of the people that we have involved in this. I'd like to thank all of them for their strong work. Through all that work last night, we were able to make a few breakthroughs. We were able to track the movements of the shooter. Starting at 11:52 a.m., this subject arrived on campus, shortly away from campus. We have tracked his movements onto the campus, through the stairwells, up to the roof, across the roof to a shooting location. After the shooting, we were able to track his movements as he moved to the other side of the building, jumped off of the building, and fled off of the campus and into a neighborhood. Our investigators have worked through those neighborhoods, contacting anybody they can with doorbell cameras, witnesses, and have thoroughly worked through those communities, trying to identify any leads. We do have good video footage of this individual. We are not going to release that at this time. We are working through some technologies and some ways to identify this individual. If we are unsuccessful, we will reach out to you as the media and we will push that publicly to help us identify them. But we are confident in our abilities right now, and we would like to move forward in a manner that keeps everyone safe and moves this process appropriately. Last night I communicated with Erica. The family's devastated. As a Commissioner of Public Safety, as a father, as a husband, I can only imagine what that family's going through. The heinous event that happened yesterday is not Utah. This is not what we're known for. Over the past several weeks, we've seen this state come together to help families in mourning, come together as a community to show what Utah is known for a state of character, of service, of camaraderie, of a neighboring feel. We will not stand for what happened yesterday. We are exhausting every lead. We have every officer invested in this, every investigator, every local agency. The outpouring of support from the law enforcement community has been astounding. We are investing everything we have into this, and we will catch this individual. Having walked through the crime scene, through the hallways of this school, through the classrooms, I can't imagine what the people on scene felt as well. A horrific event where some of them barricaded in classrooms, some of them ran in fear. Can't overstate the tragedy and the horrific event that yesterday was, and how we will work to bring to justice the actions of one individual or any other individuals that assisted in that. Our state has gone through a lot, and we will come out successful. With that, I'll turn the time over to Special Agent Bowles. In charge.
Good morning. My name is Robert Bowles, and I am the Special Agent in charge of the Salt Lake Field Office. Following yesterday's tragic shooting of Charlie Kirk, FBI agents have been working around the clock in coordination with our law enforcement partners. We are and will continue to work nonstop until we find the person that has committed this heinous crime and find out why they did it. This morning, I can tell you that we have recovered what we believe is the weapon that was used in yesterday's shooting. It is a high-powered bolt-action rifle. That rifle was recovered in a wooded area where the shooter had fled. The FBI laboratory will be analyzing this weapon. Investigators have also collected footwear impression, a palm print, and forearm imprints for analysis. Now, I understand there are a lot of questions about motive. I assure you that all leads, tips are being fully investigated. As of this morning, we have received more than 130 tips. We thank the community for that. The FBI has brought every resource to bear, and we will continue to do so throughout the course of this investigation. The FBI's mission is to protect the American people. It's to uphold the Constitution of the United States. Any attack on the First Amendment is an attack on the very foundation of our democracy. That is why we will relentlessly pursue this case and the shooter until we find him. We also continue to grieve with the family and the community. It's our community. If you have any video or images from the shooting, we ask you to please submit them to our digital media tip website at www.fbi.gov/Utah Valley Shooting. You can also call the FBI at 1-800-CALL-FBI. We truly rely on the public's help in these types of cases, and no tip is too small or insignificant. Thank you.
Absolutely. So what I'll release about the suspect is suspect blended in well with a college institution. We're not releasing many details right now, and we will soon. But right now we're not. But that individual appears to be of college age. We are confident in our abilities to track that individual. If we're unsuccessful in identifying them immediately, we will reach out for the public's help and the media's help in pushing those photos. That was a new development overnight, working through the night, studying those cameras. So that's something that's new and that we're working through right now. As far as the security, I cannot speak to that. Neither the Department of Public Safety nor the Federal Bureau of Investigation was involved in the planning or security of this event, and that'll have to be a question later for other agencies.
So that's a good question, and it's a question that goes to the safety of the community, right? No, not in those woods. We've walked through those woods and secured it. As to the community, I can tell you that this was a targeted event. We don't believe that the community is at risk. However, we are exhausting every resource to find him, and we will do so. So I can't comment specifically on his face or any details such as that, as it's continuing to be a part of the investigation, and again, we'll release that shortly. However, we're doing everything we can to find him, and we're not sure how far he has gone yet, but we will do our best. We have images of the suspect. Again, as part of the investigation, we're not releasing any details such as that right now. We are exhausting all of our resources to be able to collect those, but that's, again, part of the investigation. Excuse me? We are working on that, but again, part of the investigation that I can't release. Not at all. We've got complete and total support from everyone, from the director on down, and it's been an incredible supportive environment so far. All I can say is that we're working the investigation the best we have with the environment we're given. So thank you.
We've just been listening to officials in Utah. They're describing what they call a breakthrough in the search for the gunman who shot and killed conservative activist Charlie Kirk at a speaking event yesterday. They say now that they are confident that they can track the shooter's movements. Let's get right to ABC News Chief National Correspondent Matt Gutman. Matt, it sounds like they've acquired quite a bit of evidence overnight on the shooter's movements.
Yeah, it seems like they've made a significant breakthrough in figuring out at least when this person started. They said they tracked him arriving here on campus about 11:52 a.m. The shooting happened about 18 minutes later. Then they tracked his movements on campus, going up a stairwell, climbing up on top of the roof, setting up for that shot. And then at some point after the shot, very quickly scampering across the roof, jumping off of it and running into a nearby neighborhood. They also said something very interesting. They are concerned about overly identifying this person. I think it seems that they know or have a pretty good beat on who this person might be or where they might be. They're keeping some of this information close to the vest, but they did say, Diane, that this person blended into the college community. They can't say that it was a student, but it was someone of that age who may have looked the part. Obviously someone who was capable with a firearm. They found that rifle in a wood, and they do say that they have a palm imprint, they have a forearm imprint, and a foot imprint. So I think they are getting close to this person. And for folks at home who've been listening, you can tell that they are adamant that they are going to find this suspect. Both the FBI and the Utah Department of Public Safety saying that they are going to get this man. And it also helps explain why we have been seeing, Diane, so little security here over the past, I would say, 8 hours. This place was full of law enforcement when we arrived here last night. Now it's virtually empty because they believe that this person is not here, and it seems that they are actively pursuing this suspect elsewhere. They say they'll update us, but apparently they don't want to give too much away to the public at this point, Diane.
And I want to bring in ABC's Chief Justice Correspondent Pierre Thomas, too, because, Pierre, they also say they recovered the weapon used in this shooting. What more are you hearing about that and the other evidence they've found so far?
Well, Diane, what you see unfolding is all the things that we said that we were doing last night bore fruit. The surveillance footage around the campus yielded information and images of the shooter. And they're very confident based on the clear imaging that they have that they can identify this person. Also, because they had those images, they were able to track the suspect into the woods. That's where they found a weapon that they suspect was used in the shooting. They won't know until they do additional forensic work on that, the palm impression, all the other evidence. So you literally see how the dragnet is unfolding based on that surveillance footage that they spent time overnight painstakingly going through and looking for. You'll now see them pursuing information from surrounding areas, doorbell cameras, anything like that. This is a massive investigation. It involves collating huge amounts of information, but they feel very strongly that they have a high likelihood of being able to identify the suspect soon. They said if they cannot do so, they will seek the public and the media's help in doing so.
All right, Pierre, Matt, thank you both. Again, those were officials in Utah describing what they call a breakthrough in the search for the gunman who shot and killed conservative activist Charlie Kirk. Investigators are now saying that they are able to track that shooter's movements, that they have good video of the suspect, and they are confident in their ability to track him down. We will continue to bring you updates on this story as we have them. Our coverage continues on ABC News Live and abcnews.com. Now we'll return to your regular programming. For some of you, that's Good Morning America, and David Muir will be here with the entire team for World News Tonight. I'm Diane Macedo in New York. Have a great day. And we are getting some more of those new details in the killing of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. At that press conference just a few minutes ago, authorities said they've recovered a weapon, which they described as a high-powered rifle. They also say the suspect appears to be college-aged and, in their words, blended in well with the college crowd. Let's bring in ABC's Jacqueline Lee, who's on the scene, and ABC News contributor and former FBI agent Brad Garrett for more. Jacqueline, what do you make of the progress that officials are saying they made here? They're literally describing this as a breakthrough, and they've twice now said that they are confident.
That's right, Diane. So, yesterday, officials said they were going to find the person. They are pouring in all of their resources from the highest levels of the Trump administration and working with the FBI in tandem as well as local officials to get more answers and to track down the gunman. And so the fact that they were able to track his movements. They say they were able to track the person's movements up the stairwell onto the roof. They say that individual then jumped from the building, and then they eventually were able to find that high-powered rifle in the woods. They canvassed the area. They spoke with neighbors. They looked at all the surveillance videos. They asked for doorbell videos, and they say they have a very good look at the individual, but they are not releasing that information at this point, given where they are in the investigation. But they have made significant progress in the last few hours. Diane.
Brad, something else stuck out to me, too, because yesterday officials were saying that all they had was this kind of campus surveillance. All they could say was the shooter was wearing dark clothing. Today, they're saying we have good, they literally use the word good video footage of this suspect twice, again, as I mentioned, saying that they're confident that they can track the suspect's movements. What do you make of the pieces of the puzzle that they are mentioning here? Video footage, that they have recovered the weapon here, an imprints, and so on.
So I think it may well tell you that it does take it takes time to pull up all the different videos that you might have and then to go through them. So you start with that, but let's just draw a picture here. They have a guy go up on the roof. They have video of that. They have him coming down from the roof, going into a wooded area. Apparently, at some point, I presume in the woods, discarded the weapon. Now, he probably did that he didn't want to be seen carrying a weapon running through a neighborhood or walking through a neighborhood. That weapon will give you potentially leads. Where did it come from? It could well be registered or purchased by the shooter. We'll have to see. Was it stolen? Whatever it might be, ATF, etc., will help them immediately, and they probably already know what that is. If you have maybe less so footprints initially, but certainly palm prints, if he's ever had a full set of prints where you print the entire hand, let's say he'd been in the military or some aspect of the government or a contractor, they may have those. That's a long shot, but they may have those. But I get in the voice of both the Commissioner of Public Safety and the FBI agent, special agent in charge, that they may well already know who this guy is, that they have clear pictures of him and maybe sources of other people, or someone said, I know who that guy is. And so they're looking for him. The key here is they're not releasing the pictures, and I've been up this road before in cases, because you don't want to spook the person more than they're already aware that, hey, they may be onto my trail. In other words, you want them to sort of stay in whatever lifestyle they might be in at this point. As you run down addresses, associates, friends, their job, they've been in the military or not, whatever it might be, to draw a circle around him to catch him someplace. The concern obviously as time goes on, now we're up to not quite 24 hours, did he leave the area? If he's smart, he did. But, many times these kind of shooters, they don't do that.
Brad, they're saying this was a high-powered bolt-action rifle, and yesterday they described the shot as coming from at least 100 yards away. Does that tell you anything? Yeah. Does that require a certain level of experience? Well, it's certainly, as far as the weapon they described, something probably like an AR-15, an M4, something in that category, is that they're relatively easy to shoot. However, from 100, 200 yards away, my guess is a scope and a tripod would have helped him a lot for steadiness. But the real key, Diane, is if he was able, and sadly did, one shot that killed Charlie Kirk, that's showing some proficiency, because it's very difficult to have the breathing and the concentration to pull off one shot like that, and that's what killed the person. Does that suggest prior training? Maybe. It certainly suggests somebody who's been practicing a lot with this weapon or a weapon just like this. That's another place you're obviously going to look. You're going to go to all the gun ranges, gun shops, place they sell ammo, and ATF obviously can help them with that quickly, to see if anybody fits the profile of what they're looking for. All right, Jacqueline Lee, Brad Garrett, thank you both. And President Trump is praising Kirk as a patriot who inspired millions. At 31, Kirk was at the forefront of a burgeoning conservative youth movement and was known as the Trump Whisperer, deeply involved in vetting top positions for the administration. He was also a husband, father, leaving behind a wife and their 2 young children. ABC's Perry Russum has a look at Charlie Kirk's life and legacy.
He was never elected to office, but during his 31 years, Charlie Kirk was able to leave an indelible mark on American politics with his willingness to debate the other side.
Charlie was a patriot who devoted his life to the cause of open debate and the country that he loved so much.
Kirk took his message to TikTok last year with a series called You've Been Brainwashed, traveling to college campuses, squaring off against students on everything from immigration to abortion.
It's not dependent on the mom, and it can be its own thing.
If you have a pacemaker, you're dependent. If you have a ventilator, you're dependent. Babies are in NICU units, neonatal intensive care units, they're dependent. Dependency does not equal its degree of moral worth.
Amassing more followers than Fox News, Tucker Carlson, even the Kamala Harris campaign. Speaking here about gender.
You can't define what a man is?
It's a little opaque. Again, you're looking at a man.
But your video, the largest video on TikTok is, what is a woman, 20 million views? You don't know what a man is in your own worldview?
I said you're looking at a man, right?
Kirk voiced opposition to gay rights, rejected the separation of church and state, and described COVID lockdowns as government tyranny. He said he was simply speaking truths that others were too afraid to say out loud. Speaking here on guns.
I think it's worth to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect our other God-given rights. That is a prudent deal. It is rational. Nobody talks like this. They live in a complete alternate universe.
Kirk began his political journey young. In high school, he led a protest against the price of cookies in the cafeteria. When he was 17, he wrote an op-ed claiming his economics textbook was pushing liberal ideas. That led to his first appearance on national TV. A year later, he co-founded Turning Point USA to take on liberal groups on college campuses. It grew rapidly, with thousands of chapters. By 2016, Kirk was speaking at the Republican National Convention.
We work on college campuses across the country. The only way we're going to take back the youth of this country is to storm them, and that is how we're going to make America great again.
Initially skeptical of Donald Trump, he quickly embraced the campaign, and during Trump's first term, he claimed to have visited the White House about 100 times. Insiders calling him the Trump Whisperer.
He's done something that is just incredible for somebody really of his age. You need tremendous talent to do what he's done. Building one of the most powerful youth organizations ever created, Turning Point USA, and I want to thank you, really, Charlie. Incredible job.
After the 2020 election, Kirk was among those promoting false claims of election fraud. 4 years later, after Trump's re-election, he was credited with delivering the youth vote.
His mission was to bring young people into the political process, which he did better than anybody ever, to share his love of country and to spread the simple words of common sense. On campuses nationwide, he championed his ideas with courage, logic, humor, and grace.
Our thanks to Perry Russum for that report. And now Kylie Spencer, the author of Raising Them Right, joins me now with more on Charlie Kirk's legacy. Kyle, thanks for coming on. I know you've reported extensively on Kirk and other conservative activists. What do you think made Charlie Kirk different?
Charlie Kirk was really gifted at messaging to a new Republican Party. And he was really gifted at sharing with audiences the way that the Republican Party could meet the needs of a young, energized group of people who had felt alienated and disenfranchised from the party before he arrived on the scene.
President Trump credits Kirk with helping him get back in the White House. What do you make of how he gained so much influence so young?
Charlie Kirk was a very charismatic leader. He was a very gifted strategist. He was somebody who, as I wrote my book and followed him, I saw how good he was at creating alliances. Donors, politicians, young people, they really adored him. He had a rare gift for a political activist of being able to align himself and create close relationships with people of all ages and of all different backgrounds. That was what allowed him to have the influence he had. People really trusted him, and they were young, they were old, they were different races. The folks who really agreed with Charlie and his views saw him as a very good spokesperson for those views and somebody who could share those views with others.
You say he's impacted the Republican Party in ways people don't even understand. What do you mean by that?
Charlie Kirk came into the movement when he was very young, just out of high school. And very early on, he had an idea. And the idea was that the Republican Party was old and stodgy, disconnected to the country, and using outdated methods to communicate. Charlie told operators, he told donors as he toured around the country, this was in 2012, 2013, while the Tea Party movement was going on, he traveled the country. He said, I have a new vision for the Republican Party. It attracts a diverse group of people. It attracts young people. It is cool. It is exciting. It is energetic. People are passionate about what the Republican Party stands for. What we see today in the Republican Party, that's Charlie's legacy, and that lives on.
Given his influence on young people, how do you see his vision for the party carrying on?
Turning Point USA, which has been the mechanism and the system in which Charlie has been able to corral followers and to spread the message of the Republican Party, that is a very, very well-funded, very large operation with a very, very big staff that was with Charlie for years. Charlie is really the brander, the spokesperson, the money raiser. That was the role he had, a strategist, a thinker. But the doers inside Turning Point USA and the various factions of Turning Point USA, Turning Point Action, Turning Point Faith, those are other people who Charlie hired, and they will live on and they will continue to do the work that they've done. As the premier spokesperson for the Turning Point brand, Charlie will not, he will no longer be around to play that role. But the events, a lot of the stuff that Turning Point USA is known for will continue.
So, Kyle, how do you think his murder could impact the movement and the party?
I think what you're seeing right now in the country are two ways of handling this tragedy. There is one faction that is saying we need to turn down the rhetoric. We need to stop this violence. We need better gun control. Nobody on a college campus, a student, a visitor, a speaker, a debater, should feel unsafe, should feel that their life is at risk. And the way to achieve that type of safety on a college campus is better gun control laws. There is another faction that is seeing this as a call to action, a call to war. There is a faction that has decided already that the person who killed Charlie was a liberal, and that liberal is part of a movement that wants to aggressively take down the Republicans. So these are two different views and ways of handling this terrible, terrible event. And I'm not sure which side will prevail, but what we are watching right now is diverging views on how to go forward.
All right, author of Raising Them Right, Kyle Spencer. We appreciate your time today, Kyle. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Kirk's shooting is the latest in an eruption of violent attacks against political figures in this country. In just a little over a year, we've seen 2 attempts against President Trump, the murder and attempted murder of 2 Democratic lawmakers in Minnesota, and an arson attack at the home of the Democratic governor of Pennsylvania. Now President Trump is blaming rhetoric from Democrats and the media for Kirk's death. ABC's Andrea Fujii has more on the political violence on both sides of the aisle, from Minnesota to Capitol Hill.
The murder of Charlie Kirk is heightening concern about the rise in cases of political violence across the country.
Our nation is broken, and I want to be very clear that this is a political assassination.
Charlie Kirk's a casualty of war.
Then candidate Trump was shot at a campaign rally in Pennsylvania last year. An audience member, firefighter Corey Comparator, was killed. Months later, a second attempt on Trump's life at his Florida golf course. The suspect is now on trial. This past June, a Minnesota state representative and her husband were shot and killed in their home. And in April, police say a man tried to kill Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, setting his home on fire.
This kind of violence is becoming far too common in our society. It is not okay, and it has to stop.
The list goes on. Then House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's husband was attacked in his home. And years earlier, Congressman Steve Scalise was shot at a congressional baseball game. This year, threats against members of Congress are surging, with nearly 14,000 compared to 9,000 during all of last year. Many are asking, is the political temperature too hot? And is social media adding fuel to the fire?
Andrea Fujii, thank you. And ABC News contributor and presidential historian Mark Updegrove has more on this shooting and America's history of political violence. So, Mark, you compare today's political divisiveness to the 1960s. How is it similar, and what makes today different?
You know, the 1960s were another time of great upheaval and discord and division. And we saw in that decade, in just 5 years, Diane, the assassinations of John F. Kennedy, of Malcolm X, and in 1968 alone, the back-to-back assassinations of Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy. So again, another time of great change and great heated political rhetoric. I think today it's slightly different. I think you have a president in place who offers extreme views that get extremism from the other side. There was more moderation in the 1960s, at least among our political leaders. But you had things like the Civil Rights Movement, the Vietnam War that were tearing Americans apart. The similarity here is that political violence does not solve our problems. And we have to realize that. We have to understand each other and know that in a democracy, we have competing views and we have to offer ideas to counter those views. That's the solution in a democracy, not violence.
Mark, you say a lot of the divisiveness we see today has to do with a fragmented media landscape. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think social media gives us an opportunity to purvey extreme views from one side or the other with absolute impunity. And it gets us angered and enraged. And for social media purveyors, that enragement means engagement. It's good for them. It's good for their business. So they don't discourage this. I think we have to understand that these devices add to the divisions that we see in our country and be more responsible with what we're putting out there, despite the fact that it doesn't come back to stick us, despite the fact that we can do so with impunity. We shouldn't do it because that affects the social fabric of our country. That creates to the divisions that we're seeing today, Diane.
In response to this shooting, President Trump said, and I'm quoting here, "It's long past time for all Americans and the media to confront the fact that violence and murder are a tragic consequence of demonizing those with whom you disagree." What do you make of his message, especially as the target of 2 assassination attempts himself?
I think he's absolutely right. We have to worry about the way that we are communicating, and the media is a means of doing that. I think the responsible message for all leaders in our country is to say that this should stop, and we should prevent extremism on both sides of the aisle. You had that litany of violence that was mentioned in the piece, Diane, and that's on both sides of this. That's on the right and that's on the left. It's happening from all sides, not just the left, as in the case of Charlie Kirk. We don't know what the motivations of the assassin were, but we can assume that that assassin disagreed with the views of Charlie Kirk. But we're seeing that on the other side, too. We have to understand that it's not just one side. It's both. It is extremism that we need to prevent in this country.
Looking back at the 1960s and how Americans came out of that, where do we go from here as a nation? How do we get out of this?
You know, Lady Bird Johnson, who was the first lady for the bulk of the 1960s for 5 years and 2 months, said, "The clash of ideas is the sound of freedom." We are entitled as Americans. We're entitled to our own views. That's freedom of speech. That's what a democracy looks like. But a democracy can be messy. And again, we have to understand that this is not the solution. This violence is not the way to go forward. We have to listen to one another. We have to try to understand one another, and we have to try to go forward as a nation, as hard as that might be at certain times when we hear views that are so counter to what we ourselves believe, Diane.
Charlie Kirk was a man with a lot of critics and a lot of fans. What do you think his legacy will be?
Well, it depends. He was a leader who had great charisma and great impact. This is somebody who really galvanized the youth. There was no expectation that Trump would get 45% of the youth vote, which he did in 2024. That's much, much higher than many people believed he would get. And that was largely because of the effective movement that Charlie Kirk waged. I think he is a very difficult leader to replace. And there may be a void among the youth, given the fact that we will no longer have Charlie Kirk's voice. He may be martyred. There might be people who rise up and try to fill that gap, or it may not. It remains to be seen what happens when you have somebody this large with a voice this loud who fades from the scene, Diane.
And is the bigger impact the loss of that person and you know, all the events he would have spoken out, presumably, or does it potentially have a bigger impact that now his death is raising so much attention to his cause?
Well, I think that's the thing. If he is martyred in this moment and people rally to the cause, then I think in terms of the movement, his death would not have been in vain. That movement will continue to be sustained. But again, when you have somebody that major, movements can fade. We saw with Dr. Martin Luther King, who was assassinated in 1968, that the civil rights movement that Dr. King led never quite was able to sustain that continued forward movement because he was such an effective leader. We had somebody here again who was an enormously impactful and effective leader. Again, we'll see what happens whether somebody can come in and fill that void.
And Mark, we just had a guest on, Kyle Spencer, who was saying there are sort of two factions on how to respond to this. Some are calling to turn down the rhetoric, to end the division, to come together and learn how to disagree. And then there are others who feel galvanized by this and say, you know, essentially, this is war. Does history tell you anything about what determines which direction this country goes in?
Not necessarily. I mean, there are a lot of factors here, a lot of variables. One hopes that this does not lead to a war. No side, no victor or loser wins in a war, particularly in the United States of America. We are a less effective nation when we are divided. So I'm hopeful that this leads to something where we can reconcile on this.
All right. Our thanks to Mark Updegrove. And right now, President Trump is about to speak at the Pentagon to honor the heroes of 9/11. Let's pause for the network to join us for a special report.
This is an ABC News special report.
Hi, I'm Diane Macedo. We are coming on the air because President Trump is at the Pentagon marking the 24th anniversary of the September 11th attacks. Let's listen to the president.
Thank you.